Sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference between truth and fiction. With the media telling stories, you don't know whether they're true, whether it's fake news, or whether it's a wild conspiracy theory.
And there are some wild conspiracy theories out there, from stories about the moon landings being faked, Elvis being abducted by aliens, and then there are the fake news stories and the April Fools, like the well-known story of the spaghetti harvest in Switzerland.
There are also stories and fake news or conspiracy theories about church finance. So in this session, we're going to try and sort out the fact from the fiction. And we're also going to look at how we as churches can support one another.
So, why don't you have a look at some statements about church finance and decide together whether they're fact or fiction.
Hopefully you've begun to sort some of the fact from the fiction. One of the facts that the Bible gives us is that the church is supposed to be a community which help and support one another. Jesus and other New Testament writers all talk about this image and use different ways to illustrate that.
The pictures that we find in the New Testament are that the church is a flock, a household, a vine, even as a building site. Within those pictures is an understanding that they were there to help, support and encourage one another. And we're going to think a little bit more about that with this tower building game.
At the moment, this tower is on a firm base and all of the bricks are lined up to try and support one another.
But as soon as we start taking bricks out, the picture begins to change. What once was nice, stable and secure starts getting just a little bit wobbly, and eventually the tower falls. All those pictures from the New Testament about the church as a flock, as a household, as a vine or as a building site show that we need to be interdependent. We need to support and help one another. As soon as we begin to opt out, then things begin to tumble.
Imagine trying to play this game on a wobbly table. It doesn't matter how well these bricks are connected, how well they're stacked and support one another. It's always going to be in danger of tumbling over.
And that's why we need the national church and our diocese. They provide a firm base on which the ministry of our parishes can rest.
One of the foundations that should be of the church is honesty. We need to be open about our financial situation, about our budgets, about how much things are costing. If we're supposed to be God's flock, then we need to not pull the wool over each other's eyes. So with us talking about money, what better place to come than to an accountancy firm?
Not many of us are accountants and able to make sense of pages and pages of figures.
Sometimes we can find church finance to be a bit of a mystery.
So we're here to talk to a Diocesan Stewardship Advisor, Stephanie Rankin, to find out ways of making church finances a little bit more comprehensible. Now Stephanie, you are an accountant and you're also a Diocesan Stewardship Advisor. What can we do to help those who aren't accountants better understand church finance?
Well, I think one of the ways, though we have to do proper parish accounts that are columns of numbers, they're really difficult to understand. And one of the much easier ways is to use pictures. I really like bar charts because you can compare what's happening in different years against different things. And even if you can't do it yourself, if you input information into the parish return system, they do bar charts for you as well. So you can get a bar chart of your income for the church for the last few years and the expenses for the last few years, and you can see what's happening, what's going up, what's going down, and how the different sections compare. And that makes it much easier for people to understand what's happening. All of this is data that's already being entered by your parish into the return system. This is what you can get back. If you don't know how to get it back, ask somebody. One of the people who'd be really helpful is the Diocesan Stewardship Advisor, or there may be somebody who you are used to talking to about your data and statistics, and they should be able to help you. And the great thing about these charts is that it's something the National Church is producing for you, and then people at the local diocesan office can help you if you don't know how to get the data out, because all these things are done to help you in your own parishes to understand what's happening in your church's finances. I like this chart because it shows different years and it shows what the income and expenses are for each year. So in this chart, the top line is the income for the year, and the bottom line, the bluey one, is the expenses. And you can see here that the expenses are bigger than income in each year. But you can also compare the different colours. So you can see here the dark green line gets a bit smaller in that middle year, and then it gets bigger again in the last year, and that's because the giving is growing. So I find it really helpful to be able to compare income against expenses, as well as comparing what's happening in each year, and that gives you a picture of what's happening. Other churches might not do a chart in that format. Perhaps they'll use a pie chart and look at the different slices of pie and how large they are compared to the other slices of pie. That's another way of helping people understand where most of the money comes from and where most of the money goes. It's really helpful when planning in a church to know what you're going to do and how much money you're going to need if you make a budget. And people think budgets are a really complicated thing, but actually a budget's really easy to make. You just need to take last year's figures and work out how much they might go up or down this year. It's just an educated guess, but at least you've got an idea of what's going to happen. If you have a budget, you'll be able to see what's happening to your income and your expenses over the year, and if it looks like your expenses are too high or your income's not big enough, you can look at ways to change things. See whether it's a giving campaign that you need, or whether you need to look at cutting expenditure. But without that budget, you wouldn't know, so you wouldn't be able to plan. And though it might seem a bit scary doing a budget for a church if you've never thought about that before, actually, most of us budget all the time. We know what money comes into our family. We know what money's going to go out. We've got a good idea each month what we can spend. If we plan a holiday, we plan a holiday that we know we'll be able to afford. It's just taking those same common sense household principles and applying them to the church. And it's not a difficult thing to do. A really good thing that all churches can do to help people understand is, firstly, take the opportunity every year at the APCM to share the numbers in a way that people understand. So that might be back to those charts, and it might be you share the budget. But then, critically, we need to be teaching and preaching about generosity and stewardship, because without that, people come to faith, they don't learn about stewardship, people don't have any understanding, and then we wonder why they don't give. So as leaders in the church, it's important that people take opportunities to preach and teach about giving as part of the whole discipleship of people. There's quite a lot of myths around about church finances, and if you went to an APCM and asked somebody not in the PCC, they may well not really know even how their own church is financed. So there are people who think that the Church of England is a bit of an extension of the National Trust. Maybe historic houses pay for our churches. Maybe the government funds the buildings and the clergy. But we know that that's not the true situation. But part of the importance of making everything clear is to help people to actually understand the true position about the myths.
So why don't you work together as a group and think about ways in which you can make your church finances clearer for your congregation?
So we're coming to the end of this course, so let's look over those 5 different main themes that we've been looking at.
We began by thinking about God's character and his generosity towards humanity.
We've been thinking about being generous people, especially with our time and talents in service of God.
We've also thought about the way in which we serve God by our financial giving and what shapes and influences our decisions about what we give.
We've been thinking about how we should be influenced by our faith and that our faith should shape our attitudes and our actions.
And we've also considered wider church finance and the need to be open, clear and honest when we speak about those things.
So as we come to the end of this course, let's review and look over those different themes. And let's start at the very beginning. Generosity, gift and grace are part of the nature and character of God. Generosity shown through creation. Grace shown through the life, the work, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the gift of the Holy Spirit enables us to be fully alive.
So when we think about generosity, gift and grace, we see the characteristics of God fully revealed. And it is important to consider our response back. And when we get the response right, it's a source of great joy. In 1 Chronicles chapter 29, we see an account where the leaders and the people of God give to God's work. They do so with great energy and enthusiasm. And as their gifts are presented, the Bible tells us,
Then the people rejoiced because they had offered so willingly, for they made their offering to the Lord with their whole heart.
may we too discover the joy, the gift and the grace of generous giving.